And the captain called, "Right full rudder." The ship turns. Powerful. And sometimes it's really exciting if there's torpedoes before that. There's torpedoes in the water and the captain calls, "Right full rudder." And the ship turns and something happens. It's exciting when there's another ship right in front. "Right full rudder." And hopefully they don't bump into each other. Or an iceberg, and maybe they do. Or the beach, or something else. The interesting question is, have you ever tried calling "right full rudder"? Anybody? Well, let's give it a try. Don't be shy. Right now, go ahead and call out loud, "Right full rudder."
Right full rudder.
Nice. One more time, nice and loud. "Right full rudder." Anything happen? No. No. So, did it work? Well, you set up the intention to call "right full rudder," and that worked just fine. Congratulations. So the voice part is working just fine, and for Dina that's not working today, so it's a reminder that even if it's little tiny steps, if the ship's not moving, if you're able to call out, that could be good too. And it's a reminder for us of the metaphysics that there is no direct connection between your word and your experience. There's no direct connection between your word and your experience. It's causative. It's definitely part of it, and if we don't put our word into something, it's very unlikely that it's going to happen. If we don't set an intention, it's very unlikely that that goodness that we are seeking is going to happen. Might by coincidence. There's still a whole bunch of randomness in the world around us. The pieces carom against each other. But in order for "right full rudder" to actually work, the captain, or whoever is in charge, says, "Right full rudder," and the helmsman, who's got the steering wheel, hears it and realizes that there's work to be done and turns the wheel. And then there's some assembly of technology. Could be as simple as a cable, could be as complicated as computers and other fancy things, connected down to the rudder, the bottom of the back of the boat, which then turns, which turns the ship. And that's the way it works. That's great. It doesn't always work. There was a situation some number of months ago that you probably heard about in Baltimore Harbor, where the ship was headed towards the bridge, and they said, actually I think it was left full rudder, but there was no power on the ship, so the rudder couldn't do anything, and crunch, everything went, and down came the bridge. Again, is there power? What kind of power is it? Is it willpower? Is it with you focusing your attention on making something happen? Is that mental power that you've got? Is it emotional power where you're worrying? You're hoping that something's going to happen? Oh my gosh, wringing your hands? Is that the kind of power that's powering this? Or is there spiritual power? Is there an awareness of an infinite power, a divine presence, one source that's sharing itself as all of creation? Is that the power that we're looking to? Is that power available so that when I say "right full rudder," I can know with full faith that the rudder is going to turn, the ship is going to move, the power is at hand, and all the pieces are fitting together to bring whatever that goodness is that's over towards the right into my experience. And even when it works, it can take a while for the ship to turn. Ships are not sports cars. Okay? They turn the rudder, and it takes a while for them to start turning. And then when they let the rudder go back again, it takes a little while for them to stop turning. So it's about understanding not only that it's going to work, but how it's going to work, and being present to the functioning of that, being present to the change, to the transformation that's happening in our life, and not giving up too soon. We use that metaphor a lot about gardening or agriculture, where you get an idea, that's your seed. And we decide that that's the plant, the flower, the vegetable that we want to grow, and we plant that seed into the fertile, creative soil. And we do our part, which is to water it, to make sure that it's weeded, to make sure that there's enough nutrients in the soil, that it's sunny, that the temperature is going to be okay. And then we get out of the way. The worst thing that we can do is dig the seed back up again to make sure it's germinating properly. Don't do that. That's like turning the wheel for just a little bit, say, this isn't working, and then turning it back. It might have started turning. You might just not have felt it yet. When it works, it can take a little while for it to become noticeable that it's working. The thing to remember for yourself, what's your expectation? What do you expect to happen when you call right full rudder? Do you expect to have somebody or some force or something that's responding to that? That's going to make something happen? Or is the belief and the expectation, nobody's listening to me. I'm not effective. I don't have the ability to make that call. Even if the helmsmen were over there, they don't take me seriously. So they're not going to turn the wheel. And if they turned the wheel, they wouldn't turn it far enough. There's something wrong with them, or there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with the system. What am I bringing to it? Do I have an expectation? Do I have an expectation that it's going to work? Do I have an expectation that it should have been working already and there's something wrong with the whole system, the way that it's working, and I'm somehow being victimized here? What's my expectation? Do I only do that when it's an emergency? Is it only right full rudder when I'm about to crash into something? Or do I remember that I am able to adjust my course and to make those calls and to set that intention and to open myself up to something new and to invite the goodness that I'm seeking all the time? Do I remember that all the time? Is it worth remembering? I think so. Sometimes I forget. And sometimes it's impatience. Sometimes it's impatience, like, I've been doing this for so long, it's just time for something different to happen. Does that work? No. No, it's an infinite universe. Okay, to our knowledge, 14.2 billion years old. The infinite has plenty of time. The infinite is perfectly willing to wait much longer than we're willing to wait. So if it's impatience, if we think that something's going to change just because we're ready for it to change, then we might be losing sight of the way that the system is working. And it's always working. There is always something listening to us. And if we think, right full rudder, but don't say anything, we shouldn't really have an expectation that things are going to change. And if we think of ourselves as the captain standing on the bridge saying, right full rudder, and we go, it's still nothing's going to happen. But it's not going to not happen because the system doesn't work. It's because we're not engaging with the process in a way that's going to bring the good that we're looking for into our lives. Been having some fun conversations with some of my fellow New Thought ministers. We're getting ready for the International New Thought Alliance World Congress, and one of my friends is already out at Unity Village, and he had started having a conversation with a couple people who were at the Fillmore Cafe. Now, usually at Unity Village, the people you run into are pretty much steeped and brought up in New Thought. And these happen to be a couple of fundamentalist Christians who came over to Unity Village to see what it was all about. And they're looking for somebody to explain if this is really religion. And the thing that he noticed, because he grew up Baptist, this is Dr. Tim Stewart, he grew up Baptist, and he said it's really difficult for some people to get into this teaching because in the tradition that he grew up in, they needed to have a devil, they needed to have a bad guy, they needed to have somebody to fight against. And if we don't have anybody to fight against, then how does the whole thing work? If I'm calling right full rudder, and it's going to be right full rudder because otherwise that guy's going to say left, and it's not going to work, and I can't blame him, then where am I? Am I okay with that? Am I okay not fighting some outside force, but being able to turn within, to follow that guidance, to know when to call the turn? Do I trust myself? Do I trust the universe? Do I trust my guidance to know that when it's time to call for my ship of life to turn, that I'm going to do it? Am I ready to participate in it? When I decide right full rudder, if there's not somebody standing there at the steering wheel, am I willing to do what's necessary to go over to the wheel and turn it myself? To make sure that that happens. Now, yeah, there's supposed to be somebody there, and that person is supposed to be listening to me, but you've seen the war movie. Sometimes something happens to the guy. Sometimes you need to go over and take care of things yourself. And the captain's standing there saying, well, there's supposed to be a guy there, and he's not, so I'm just going to keep yelling right full rudder until something happens. It's like, no, it's not going to happen. We need to be ready to take part and do that ourselves. And when the ship turns, will you notice? Will you notice that the ship is turning? In our spiritual practice, we call that a result of a prayer works story. Practical prayer for real results. That's a result. Or in the old days, they called it a demonstration. It's the shift in our experience that happens after we set that intention for whatever it is that we're doing. Loving relationship, wonderful job opportunity, right full rudder, whatever it is that we're calling for. When we make that claim on the universe, when we are participating in that creative activity, are we fully expecting that demonstration, that result to show up in our life? And then what happens if it doesn't? Anybody ever have the experience where you do a prayer and you're absolutely sure that this prayer was completely what it ought to be, and then your life doesn't change? And it's like, well, what's going on? Is this thing defective? Do I need warranty service? And then it turns out later, maybe there was more to unfold. Maybe there was part of the story that we didn't understand, and there was additional guidance that was required. So I'm not going to say we should pray for patience, because that's insisting that we're going to be waiting forever. But I will say, can we be present to the process unfolding? To understand that over time, as we do our part, as we set our intention, as we open ourselves to our good, our ship starts to turn. And sometimes it takes a while to come to that new heading. And eventually, we're going to say, all ahead, because otherwise we're going to go around in circles. To the right, according to our previous activity. We'll get to set a new course. Are we going to be present and engaged in the process while our ship of life turns and comes to our new heading so that we can branch out in that new direction? Is there power available to make it happen? Because if I'm sitting here saying, this is what I want to have happen, and I'm doing all the prayer work, and I'm doing all the affirmations and all the rest of it, but I don't believe that I have the power to make anything change, I'm not connected to that infinite creative power, then I'm just floundering. And that's okay. That's actually okay. Because if I'm intending to have a change and I'm floundering, what it's telling me is that I have more work to do for myself. We get to be open to what's possible. Do you believe it could happen? Do you believe it could work? Do you believe that you deserve the good that you're seeking? As long as you believe it, as long as you're open to it, as long as you're willing to do the work, then call for the change, for the good, for the newness that you're looking for, and participate in it happening. Because by golly, you deserve it. You deserve all the good in your world. Right full rudder or whatever it is. And so it is. Yeah.